There is a version of strength that most people cannot see. It doesn't look like courage from the outside. It looks like ease, like composure, like the kind of person who always seems to be handling things, who says "I'm fine" before they've even checked whether that's true, who shows up when they're needed, delivers what's expected, and carries on in a way that produces no visible alarm in anyone around them. And beneath all of that, something else entirely is happening. Psychology has spent considerable time studying what happens to a person after they have been hurt enough times in the right places. Not one catastrophic wound, but the accumulating kind, the repeated experience of pain arriving from people and situations that were supposed to be safe, betrayals survived and moved past, disappointments absorbed and reframed, moments of genuine need met with dismissal, indifference, or the implicit message that this particular feeling was too much for the people around them to hold. After enough of those moments, the self does something intelligent and ultimately very costly. It stops expecting anything different. And that stopping, that quiet, adaptive withdrawal of expectation, reshapes almost everything about how a person moves through the world. It doesn't look like trauma. It looks like a personality. It looks like independence, like composure, like someone who simply prefers to handle things themselves. And it is so thoroughly normalized by the person experiencing it that they often have no idea the shaping happened at all. The first way it shows up is in the reflexive, "I'm fine." Not a choice, a reflex. The question arrives before the person has located what they actually feel, and the answer has already been produced. "I'm fine" is what the nervous system has learned to offer when the alternative, the honest, unedited version, has historically produced one of two responses: either being a burden to someone not equipped to hold it, or being dismissed in a way that compounds the original pain. The nervous system, which is always learning and always protecting, stops sending the honest version to the surface. It routes it elsewhere. And what emerges instead is the version that keeps everything smooth. What emerges is fine. The second way it shows up is in the impossibility of asking for help, not a philosophical reluctance, a near physical inability. Someone who has been hurt enough times learns, at a level below conscious decision, that depending on others creates exposure. And exposure, in their history, has been where the pain tends to come from. So the self-sufficiency that develops is not a preference for independence. It is the carefully constructed alternative to the experience of needing something and not having it arrive. And it runs so deeply that even in circumstances where help is genuinely available, where the person asking is trustworthy and ready, there is a residue of the old learning that says, manage it yourself. It is safer. The third way it shows up is in the hypervigilance toward other people's moods. The person who has been hurt too many times in the wrong places becomes extraordinarily skilled at reading rooms. They notice the microshift in someone's tone before the tone has fully changed. They feel the quality of a silence changing before the silence has been identified as significant. They can tell, often before anyone else has registered anything, whether the emotional weather is about to shift. This isn't intuition in the mystical sense. It is the precisely calibrated threat detection of someone whose history taught them that paying attention was not optional. Because, in the environments where they developed, not paying attention cost them something. If this is landing somewhere in you, take a moment to like the video. It helps more people find conversations like this one. And if understanding the behavioral residue of being hurt in the right places, at the right times, is something you want more of, subscribing makes that possible. The fourth way it shows up is in the difficulty of receiving care. This one is perhaps the most counterintuitive, and the most painful because the person who has been hurt too many times is also almost always someone who craves genuine care more than they would ever admit. And yet, when it arrives, when someone offers something tender and real, and without conditions, something in them deflects, changes the subject, and minimizes what was offered. They say, "I'm okay, really," even as the offer is exactly what they needed, because care, in their history, has sometimes come before something was taken. Or care was used as currency, that was later called in. or the care arrived and then left, and the leaving hurt more than the absence would have. So the nervous system that has been shaped by those experiences protects against the possibility of that cycle repeating by declining to fully receive what is offered. And the cost of that protection is the specific loneliness of being cared for and remaining, somehow, alone. The fifth way is the emotional crash that arrives without warning. Because emotions do not disappear when they are not attended to. They go quiet, and they wait. And the person who has been managing and suppressing and routing authentic feelings into the "I'm fine" channel for long enough eventually hits a moment, usually an ordinary, low-stakes moment, when the accumulated weight breaks through. They cry at a commercial. They feel a disproportionate wave of grief during a conversation that should have been unremarkable. They arrive on a Wednesday afternoon with no apparent reason to feel the way they suddenly feel, and they interpret this as evidence of instability, as something to be embarrassed by, when what is actually happening is the emotional system doing exactly what it was designed to do, processing what the management system has been deferring. Here is the paradox at the center of all of this. The person who has been hurt too many times is almost always the person who makes other people feel the most safe. They are the one people call when they are struggling. They are the ones who know how to handle difficult things without flinching, who listen without judgment, who seem to have the capacity to absorb whatever is brought to them. And they have this capacity because they know pain from the inside, because they have carried significant weight and found a way to keep moving. The very wounds that produce the patterns also produce the depth. But the depth does not eliminate the need. And the composure does not mean the weight is no longer heavy. And the person who has held so much for so many people has almost certainly never had someone who could hold quite the same for them. Not because no one wanted to. Because the signals that would have allowed it, the genuine admission of need, the uncurated vulnerability, the honest answer to "how are you?" were routed elsewhere before they reached the surface. None of these patterns are permanent. They are adaptive. They were built in response to specific experiences, and they can, with the right conditions and the right kind of attention, be slowly, carefully updated. The update does not require grand gestures or dramatic openings. It begins with something much smaller. The private acknowledgement, with no audience required, that what has been happening is real. That the weight has been real. That the hurt was real. And that the person who developed all of these strategies to survive it was not weak for having been hurt and not wrong for having needed protection. They were a person responding to a world that had been, in specific and significant ways, not safe enough for them, and the safety they built for themselves, imperfect as it is, kept them here. Which is not nothing. Which is, in fact, everything. What is the behavior you have most relied on to protect yourself, and when was the last time you felt safe enough to put it down, even briefly? Hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.